What happens when a life of unimaginable luxury becomes a gilded cage? For Catherine Sterling, a lavish Fifth Avenue penthouse and the love of a billionaire magnate was her fairy tale. But one glittering discovery, a $2.7 million diamond necklace not meant for her, shattered the illusion. Pregnant, betrayed, and financially frozen by a man who promised her forever, Catherine was left with nothing but her wits and a burning need for justice. This isn't just a story of infidelity. It's the story of how one woman turned her deepest humiliation into her greatest weapon, orchestrating a public spectacle so audacious it would bring a titan of industry to his knees. The silence in Catherine Sterling's world was a specific, expensive kind. It was the cushioned quiet of a sprawling 88th-floor penthouse overlooking Central Park, a silence buffered by triple-paned glass, thick-pile cashmere rugs, and the hushed deference of a full-time film staff. It was the silence of a life curated to perfection, where every surface gleamed and every need was anticipated before it could be voiced. For 5 years, this had been her reality, her marriage to the tech magnate Marcus Thorne, a glittering testament to a modern-day fairy tale. At 34, Catherine possessed a serene beauty that photographers for magazines like Vogue and Town and Country loved to capture. She wasn't just a wife, she was an architect, though her career had been gently shelved after the wedding, replaced by philanthropic endeavors and the demanding full-time job of being Mrs. Thorne. Now, 7 months pregnant with their first child, a daughter, she felt a nesting instinct so powerful it was almost primal. She spent her days overseeing the design of a nursery that was less a room for a baby and more a miniature celestial palace, complete with a ceiling painted with the constellations as they would appear on her due date. Marcus was the sun around which her universe orbited. A self-made billionaire who had clawed his way up from a working-class neighborhood in Queens to the pinnacle of global finance and technology, he was a force of nature. His charisma was a high-voltage current that could power a room, and his ambition was a fire that never dimmed. He adored Catherine, or so she believed. He called her his North Star, the calm, steady point in his chaotic world. Lately, however, his orbit had become more erratic. The business trips grew more frequent. The late nights at the office stretched into the pre-dawn hours. He'd return smelling of expensive whiskey and the faint, unfamiliar scent of a perfume that wasn't hers, a delicate, spicy fragrance she couldn't place. When she'd ask, he'd kiss her forehead, his lips cool and murmur about new investors from Dubai or a critical server merger in Singapore. He was so convincing, his explanations so detailed, that to doubt him felt like a betrayal in itself. She was pregnant hormonal, she told herself. Of course, she was feeling insecure. Their 6th anniversary was approaching. It was a milestone Marcus always celebrated with extravagant flair. The first year, it was a private yacht in the Aegean Sea. The third, he'd rented out a wing of the Musée d'Orsay for a private dinner. This year, Catherine hoped for something quieter, more intimate before the baby arrived, and their world changed forever. The discovery happened on a Tuesday. Marcus was in London for a 24-hour emergency board meeting. The maid, a sweet woman named Rosa, was turning down the master bedroom when a small platinum-colored receipt slipped from the pocket of the Tom Ford suit jacket Marcus had tossed onto a valet chair. Rosa, ever meticulous, placed it on Catherine's bedside table. Catherine noticed it later that evening while reading a book on natural childbirth. It was from Leviev, the ultra-exclusive diamond merchant on Madison Avenue, a place whose jewels made Cartiers look like costume pieces. Her heart gave a little flutter of excitement. Marcus had outdone himself again. Her fingers, slightly swollen from the pregnancy, trembled as she read the details. The date of purchase was from 3 weeks prior, during his summit in Geneva. The item description was what made her breath catch in her throat: le cœur de la nuit. The heart of the night, a custom-designed necklace. The price made her eyes widen until they ached. $2,700,000. $2.75 million. It was an obscene amount of money, even for them. It was more than a gesture. It was a statement. A wave of guilt washed over her, forever doubting him. He was working so hard, crossing continents, and all the while he was planning this breathtaking surprise for her. She carefully folded the receipt and tucked it away, a warm, secret thrill running through her. The anniversary was in 4 days. The 4 days passed in a haze of happy anticipation. Catherine felt a renewed wave of love for her husband, a deep, abiding affection that overshadowed any lingering whispers of doubt. He was a good man. Her man. On the morning of their anniversary, she awoke to find Marcus beside her, already dressed in a crisp shirt, smelling of his signature Creed cologne. He was smiling, his dark eyes crinkling at the corners. "Happy anniversary, my North Star," he said, his voice a low purr. He handed her a beautifully wrapped rectangular box from Van Cleef & Arpels. It was a beautiful box, but it wasn't from Leviev. A flicker of confusion passed through her, but she quickly suppressed it. Perhaps the necklace was a separate surprise for later. She eagerly untied the ribbon. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was a lovely Alhambra bracelet, the iconic 4-leaf clover design in mother-of-pearl and gold. It was classic, elegant, and expensive. It was probably worth $50,000. "It's beautiful, Marcus." "Truly," she said, and her gratitude was genuine. It was a stunning gift, but it wasn't a $2.75 million necklace. "I knew you'd love it," he said, fastening it around her wrist. "Simple, elegant, just like you." He kissed her, then a quick, perfunctory peck before glancing at his watch. "I'm sorry, my love, but the markets in Tokyo are going crazy. I have to take a conference call. I've made us a reservation at Per Se for tonight at 8. Wear that blue dress I love." And with that he was gone, leaving Catherine alone in the vast, silent bedroom. The gold bracelet felt strangely heavy on her wrist. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was oppressive. Where was le cœur de la nuit? The question gnawed at her all day. Maybe it was a surprise for dinner. Yes, that had to be it. He would present it to her over dessert, a grand, show-stopping finale to their anniversary celebration. She clung to that thought like a life raft. That evening she wore the cobalt-blue Brandon Maxwell gown he adored, the silk clinging to her baby bump. She felt beautiful, hopeful. At Per Se, with its panoramic views of Columbus Circle, the service was impeccable, the food a work of art. But Marcus was distracted. His phone buzzed incessantly on the table beside him. He kept checking it, his brow furrowed in concentration. He spoke of acquisitions and stock options, his words a wall between them. Dessert came and went, a delicate panna cotta with a single candle flickering in the center. He raised his glass of sparkling water to her glass of champagne. To us, Catherine. To the next chapter. But there was no other box, no grand reveal, just the check which he signed without looking at the total. The ride home in the chauffeured Maybach was silent. Catherine stared out the window at the glittering lights of the city, feeling a cold dread crystallize in her chest. The bracelet on her wrist felt like a prop. The entire evening had been a performance. Back in the penthouse, Marcus immediately headed to his study. "Just need to wrap up one last thing," he called over his shoulder. Catherine stood in the center of their enormous living room, the city lights spread out before her like a carpet of fallen stars. The doubt she had suppressed for weeks came roaring back, a tidal wave of sickening certainty. There was no innocent explanation. Her training as an architect had instilled in her a meticulous, almost forensic attention to detail. Her mind, usually occupied with aesthetics and structure, now turned to investigation. She went to his study. The door was ajar, and she could hear his low, urgent tones on the phone. She retreated to her own office, a sleek space of white oak and glass, and opened her laptop. Where would a man like Marcus connect with a secret lover? Not on mainstream social media. He was too careful, his public image too polished. But the woman might be less discreet. She started with the location on the receipt. Geneva. The date. 3 weeks ago. She began searching social media platforms, not for Marcus, but for posts tagged at the high-end hotels and restaurants he frequented. The Four Seasons, the Michelin-starred restaurants, the exclusive clubs. It was a digital needle in a haystack. For hours, she scrolled through an endless stream of vapid wealth-signaling watches, cars, champagne. Then she found it. Her search query was simple: had Leviev to Geneva. Most of the results were from the brand's official account or jewelry enthusiasts. But one post stood out. It was from an Instagram account with the handle @IsaRossi. The user's name was Isabella Rossi. The photo posted exactly 3 weeks ago was a close-up shot. A young woman's décolletage, tanned and flawless. And around her neck, blazing with an almost violent fire, even in the filtered light of the photo, was a necklace. Catherine's blood ran cold. It was an astonishing piece of jewelry, a cascade of pear-shaped and brilliant-cut diamonds, culminating in a central stone the size of a robin's egg, a deep, mesmerizing blue-black diamond. It was a king's ransom in a single piece. The caption was cloyingly breathless. "The heart of the knight for the new queen of his heart." Some girls get all the luck. Geneva, matched, blessed, nash, la vie en rose. Le cœur de la nuit, le cœur de la nuit. The heart of the night. Catherine clicked on the user's profile. Isabella Rossi was stunning in her early 20s, with a cascade of dark hair, impossibly full lips, and the kind of surgically honed body that was built for bikinis and couture. Her entire feed was a catalogue of luxury, a private jet to Mykonos, shopping bags from Chanel on Avenue Montaigne, a poolside cabana at the Hotel du Cap Eden Rock. Catherine scrolled frantically, her heart hammering against her ribs. Post after post, she pieced together a timeline. Monaco. 2 months ago, the same week Marcus was there for a yachting conference. St. Bart's over New Year's, when Marcus had a fintech retreat. The locations mirrored his travel schedule with sickening precision. Isabella was his shadow, his secret life, lived out loud on a public platform he thought no one would ever connect back to him. The final devastating blow was a photo from a week ago. Isabella posing in the mirror of what was unmistakably a bathroom in one of the suites at the Mandarin Oriental in London. She was wearing a silk robe and the necklace. The caption read, "Quick trip to dreary London, brightened up by my M." Can't wait for NYC. Marcus was in London last week. And M for Marcus. Catherine felt the floor tilt beneath her. The air was sucked from her lungs. She stumbled back from her desk, one hand protectively on her stomach, the other covering her mouth to stifle a sob. It wasn't just an affair. This was a parallel life. The necklace wasn't a fling. It was an endowment. It was a declaration of love and commitment, a $3 million promise to another woman. The Alhambra bracelet on her wrist was a cheap consolation prize, an afterthought. A lie. Her marriage, her home, her carefully constructed life. It was all a sham. A gilded cage, and she had only just realized the door had been locked all along. She looked at her reflection in the dark glass of her office window. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, with a horror that was just beginning to curdle into a cold, hard rage. The North Star, he called her. It was a cruel irony. A star is only visible in the darkness, and the darkness had just fallen. The initial shock was a physical blow, leaving Catherine hollowed out and breathless. For a full day, she moved through the penthouse like a ghost, the staff casting worried glances her way as she declined meals and stared out at the city with unseeing eyes. The baby inside her kicked and shifted, a small, innocent life, oblivious to the cataclysm that had just ripped its mother's world apart. That tiny, persistent movement was a lifeline, the only thing keeping her from shattering completely. Marcus returned from his study in the early hours of the morning, his tie loosened, reeking of victory and expensive scotch. He found her on the sofa, wrapped in a cashmere throw, the lights of the city her only company. "Still up, my love?" he asked, his voice soft, but his eyes held the hard, dismissive glint of a man whose mind was already on the next conquest. "You should get some sleep." Catherine turned to look at him, her expression stripped of all its former warmth. "I know, Marcus." Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. It unnerved him. "Know what?" "That I closed the Nakatomi deal. It's going to be huge. We're talking a 10-figure valuation. I know about Isabella Rossi." She said, her gaze unwavering. "I know about Geneva. I know about London. And I know about Le Coeur de la Nuit." The name of the necklace hung in the air between them, heavy and sharp as a shard of glass. The charming facade on Marcus's face didn't just crack. It fell away, completely revealing the cold, ruthless bedrock beneath. He didn't even have the decency to look surprised or ashamed. There was only a flash of annoyance, as if she were a minor inconvenience, a glitch in his perfectly coded life. "You've been snooping," he stated, his voice turning hard. It wasn't a question. "You left a $3 million receipt on my nightstand," she retorted, a tremor of anger finally breaking through her shock. "You flaunted your mistress all over Europe. I didn't have to snoop, Marcus. I just had to open my eyes." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Don't be so dramatic, Catherine. It's not what you think." "Isn't it?" she shot back, her voice rising. "You bought another woman a necklace worth more than the down payment on this entire building, while you handed me a trinket to shut me up. You've been lying to me for months, maybe years. You've built a second life on the foundation of our marriage." She stood up, her hand instinctively going to her belly. "While I am in our home carrying your child." This, she thought, would be the moment he would break. The mention of his unborn daughter would surely pierce through his armor. She was wrong. "Let's be very clear about something," he said, taking a step toward her, his posture radiating menace. "This," he gestured around the opulent room, "is my building. My home. You live here at my discretion. The life you have, the friends you keep, The charities you patronize, it's all funded by me. You are a line item in my budget, Catherine. A very expensive one, but a line item nonetheless. The cruelty of his words was breathtaking. Each one was a calculated strike designed to diminish her, to remind her of her dependence. Our marriage, he continued, his voice dropping to a low, conspiratorial whisper, was a good merger. It served its purpose. You gave me class, a respectable, public face. I gave you a world you couldn't have even dreamed of. But don't ever mistake a business arrangement for a fairy tale. Tears streamed down her face now, hot and silent. I loved you, Marcus. I thought you loved me. Love is for poets and children, he scoffed. I have an empire to run. Isabella understands that. She's fun. She's uncomplicated. She doesn't ask questions. He straightened his tie. Now this is what's going to happen. You will continue to play the part of the devoted wife, especially through the birth. We will maintain appearances. If you behave, your life will continue its comfortable trajectory. If you decide to make a scene, if you even think about the word divorce, I will cut you off without a cent. I will bury you in legal fees until you are begging on the street. My lawyers will paint you as an unstable gold-digging shrew, and I will make sure you never see a dime of my money. Am I understood? He was a monster. The man she had loved didn't exist. He had been a carefully crafted illusion, a role played by this cold, calculating stranger. Get out, she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and white-hot fury. This is my house, Catherine. You don't give the orders here. But he did leave the room, striding back to his study and closing the door with a definitive click. A few minutes later, Catherine's phone pinged. A notification from her bank. Your credit card has been suspended. Another ping. Access to joint account ending in 4587 has been restricted. He was already making good on his threat. She was a prisoner, pregnant, emotionally devastated, and now financially impotent. He hadn't just broken her heart. He had put a gun to her head. The next 2 days were a blur of numb despair. She called her younger sister Chloe, a pragmatic and fiery journalist living in Brooklyn. Sobbing, she recounted the entire story, from the receipt to Marcus's vile threats. I knew it, Chloe seethed through the phone. I never trusted that slick bastard. Kat, you need to leave. Pack a bag and come to my place right now. I can't, Catherine cried. He's frozen everything. I have no money. He'll fight me for custody of the baby Chloe. He'll say I'm an unfit mother. He has the power and the money to create any narrative he wants. Okay. Deep breaths. Chloe said, her tone shifting from rage to strategy. Don't panic. He wants you to feel helpless. That's how guys like him win. They isolate you and make you think you have no options. But you do. You're the smartest person I know. You just need a weapon. A weapon. The word echoed in Catherine's mind. What weapon did she have? Marcus held all the cards, all the power, all the money. She felt utterly disarmed. She ended the call with Chloe, promising to stay safe and think. That night, unable to sleep, she found herself back in her office, staring at Isabella Rossi's Instagram page. It was a digital monument to Marcus's betrayal. She scrolled with a kind of masochistic fascination, each picture a fresh stab of pain. And then she saw it. It was a post from earlier that day, a close-up shot of the Le Coeur de la Nuit necklace lying on a swath of red velvet. The caption was a complaint masquerading as a brag. Ugh, the clasp on my baby is a little loose. M, is making me get it fixed before our big night out. So annoying to have to part with it even for a day, dropping it off at the master jeweler's. See you tomorrow. My love, Diamond. Problems. NYC, Catherine's mind, the architect's mind that saw patterns and weak points, kicked into overdrive. Dropping it off at the master jeweler's. There was only one place in New York you would take a Leviev piece for a clasp adjustment, the flagship store on Madison Avenue. See you tomorrow. Isabella was picking it up the next day. A wild, audacious idea began to form in her mind. It was insane. It was terrifying. It was also, she realized with a jolt, her only way out. She was Catherine Thorne, the legal, legitimate Mrs. Thorne. The necklace was purchased by her husband, Marcus Thorne. She had his name. She had the original receipt number and details memorized. She had her marriage certificate stored in a safe in her office. To the jeweler, she was the rightful claimant. Isabella Rossi was just a name in the wind. The plan solidified with breathtaking speed and clarity. It was a heist, pure and simple. A heist to steal back a piece of her life, to reclaim a fraction of the fortune he had built while she had supported him, and to fund her escape and the war that was to come. Her heart pounded with a mixture of terror and exhilarating purpose. The despair began to recede, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Marcus had called her a line item. He had called their marriage a business arrangement. Fine. It was time to liquidate her assets. She spent the rest of the night preparing. She found their marriage certificate in the safe, along with her passport and other identifying documents. She practiced her signature, the imperious flick of the T in Thorne that she had adopted. She rehearsed her lines. She couldn't appear nervous or hesitant. She had to embody the role of the entitled billionaire's wife, a woman for whom picking up a $3 million necklace was an errand as mundane as fetching dry cleaning. In the morning, she chose her outfit with the care of a soldier preparing for battle. A chic black maternity dress from the Row. Low, comfortable but expensive-looking Chanel flats. A pair of oversized Celine sunglasses to hide her eyes. And on her wrist, she wore the Van Cleef & Arpels bracelet. He had given her the perfect prop. She looked every inch the part of the pampered, slightly inconvenienced Mrs. Thorne. Before she left, she stood before the mirror. Not the shattered woman of the day before, but a strategist. He had threatened to bury her. He had underestimated her. He had forgotten she was an architect. She knew how to build, but she also knew how to handle a demolition. And she was about to bring his world crashing down. The taxi ride down Madison Avenue was the longest of Catherine's life. Each stoplight, each yellow cab that cut in front of them stretched her nerves thinner. The city outside the window was a blur of motion and noise, but inside the cab an icy calm had settled over her. It was the focus that came before a final exam, or a major presentation, the quiet before the storm. She clutched her Hermès handbag, the leather cool and smooth beneath her tense fingers. Inside her passport, and a copy of the marriage certificate, felt like contraband. The Leviev boutique was less a store and more a temple to wealth. Its discreet facade of dark, polished stone was broken only by a single, heavily fortified door and a small, elegant window displaying a lone, magnificent yellow diamond ring. A formidable-looking security guard in a tailored suit stood impassively by the entrance. Catherine paid the driver, took a deep, steadying breath, and walked toward the door. The guard's eyes swept over her, taking in the designer dress, the expensive handbag, the pregnant belly. He seemed to categorize and approve of her in a single glance. He opened the heavy door for her, without a word. The interior was hushed and opulent, a world of pale grey suede walls, gleaming chrome and soft strategic lighting designed to make the diamonds in their glass cases glitter with an almost supernatural fire. A chic saleswoman with a severe black bob and an accent that floated somewhere over the mid-Atlantic glided toward her. "Good morning, madame. How may I help you?" This was it. The performance began now. Catherine slid her Celine sunglasses down her nose, affecting a look of mild annoyance. "I'm here to collect a piece," she said, her voice cool and clipped. "My husband, Marcus Thorne, had it brought in for a repair yesterday." A necklace. The woman's professional smile didn't falter. "Of course, Mrs. Thorne. Do you have the claim ticket?" A jolt of panic. A claim ticket. Of course there would be a claim ticket. Isabella would have it. Catherine hadn't accounted for this. For a terrifying second her mind went blank. Then instinct took over. She gave a small, exasperated sigh, the kind a woman who couldn't be bothered with such trivialities would make. "Oh, honestly, I have no idea where his assistant put it," she said, waving a dismissive hand. "You know how it is. The name is Thorne, Thorne. Marcus Thorne. It's the Cœur de la Nuit piece. A large blue-black diamond." She said the name of the necklace with such authority, such casual ownership, that the saleswoman's deference deepened. The piece was obviously well known to the staff. Of course, Mrs. Thorne. "One moment, please. I will just need to see a form of identification." Naturally, Catherine said, opening her handbag and retrieving her passport. She handed it over. The woman took it, her eyes flicking from the photo to Catherine's face, then to the name. Catherine Sterling Thorne. The woman disappeared into a back room behind a heavy, silent door. Catherine was left alone in the showroom, her heart hammering a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She could feel the sweat prickling at her hairline. She stared into a case filled with diamond earrings, each pair worth more than her sister's apartment, and forced herself to breathe. Inhale for 4, hold for 7. Exhale for 8. The Lamaze technique she'd been practicing for childbirth was now being used to pull off a multi-million-dollar heist. What felt like an eternity later, the woman returned. In her hands, she carried a large, flat box of dark velvet. Catherine's breath hitched. "Everything is in order, Mrs. Thorne," the woman said with a smile. "We have tightened the clasp and given the piece a full complimentary cleaning. It's looking absolutely radiant." She placed the box on a glass counter and opened it. There it was. Le Cœur de la Nuit. It was even more spectacular in person. The diamond seemed to drink the light, the central stone, a vortex of deep cosmic blue and black. It was beautiful and terrible, all at once, a physical manifestation of her husband's betrayal. "Would you like to inspect it?" the woman asked. Catherine couldn't bear to touch it. "No, that's fine. I'm in a dreadful hurry. Just wrap it up for me, please." Moments later, she was walking out of the boutique, a discreetly luxurious shopping bag in her hand. The guard opened the door for her again. The sunlight on Madison Avenue seemed impossibly bright. She had done it. She had walked into the lion's den and walked out with the lion's treasure. She hailed the first taxi she saw, her hands shaking so violently she could barely open the door. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. She didn't go to Chloe's. She didn't go back to the penthouse. She gave him the address of a law firm in the Seagram building, a name she had pulled from an article in the New York Law Journal about the city's most formidable divorce attorneys. Amelia Hayes was exactly as her reputation suggested, sharp, impeccably dressed in a steel-grey power suit with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Her office was a corner suite with a view that spoke of staggering billable hours. She listened to Catherine's entire story without interruption, her expression unreadable. When Catherine finished detailing Marcus's threats and the morning's heist, there was a long silence. Catherine's nerve began to fail her. Had she gone too far? Would this powerful lawyer see her as a reckless, hysterical woman? Finally, Amelia leaned forward, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across her face. "Mrs. Thorne," she said, her voice rich with admiration, "that is the most gloriously brazen thing I have ever heard. I will represent you." Catherine felt a wave of relief so profound it almost brought her to her knees. She placed the Leviev bag on the polished mahogany desk between them. "This is my retainer," she said. Amelia looked at the bag, then back at Catherine. "Marcus Thorne will claim it's stolen. He'll send the police." The receipt for its purchase was made out to Marcus Thorne. Catherine said, her voice steady. "I am Catherine Thorne, his legal wife. I retrieved my husband's property. There is no theft. It's a marital asset. Isn't that the legal term?" Amelia's smile widened. "You learn fast." "Yes, it is. But possessing it is one thing. Leveraging it is another. He'll try to freeze it in litigation for years. We need to act quickly before he can get a court order to have it seized." "What do we do?" Catherine asked, placing her future entirely in this woman's hands. "We don't hide it," Amelia said, her eyes gleaming with strategic fire. "We flaunt it. We don't just use it to fund your lawsuit. We use it to humiliate him. We're going to auction it. Publicly." The idea was shocking. An auction. Think about it. Amelia explained, her mind clearly working at lightning speed. "We consign it to Sotheby's. We leak the story to the press, not the whole story, just enough. The Thorne necklace. A magnificent, one-of-a-kind jewel being sold by the mysterious Mrs. Thorne. The gossip columns will go into a frenzy." Page 6. Daily Mail. They'll invent their own narratives. Is the marriage over? Is she liquidating assets? It puts him on the defensive. It creates a public narrative that he can't control. And best of all, she paused for effect. It converts this contentious asset into sold-hard, untraceable cash. Your war chest. It was brilliant. It was terrifying. It was a declaration of war, fought not in a courtroom, but on the front page of every tabloid in the world. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of clandestine activity. Amelia's team moved with military precision. They vetted Catherine's story, secured her documents, and initiated contact with a senior vice president at Sotheby's auction house, a man named Alistair Finch. Finch, a dapper Englishman with a keen nose for provenance and publicity, was immediately intrigued. When he saw the necklace in the secure viewing room of Amelia's law firm, his professional composure barely concealed his excitement. "My word," he breathed, examining the stone through a jeweler's loop. "It's a blue-black diamond of extraordinary rarity. And the story, the Thorne name attached to it. This will cause a sensation." Marcus, as expected, exploded. The moment he discovered the necklace was gone, presumably after a frantic, hysterical call from Isabella Rossi, he unleashed his fury. Catherine, who was by then safely ensconced in a luxury serviced apartment rented under a corporate LLC created by Amelia's firm, received a barrage of venomous texts and voicemails. He threatened lawsuits, criminal charges, and utter ruin. His lawyers sent cease and desist letters to both Amelia and Sotheby's claiming the necklace was stolen property. Amelia's response was a masterclass in legal jujitsu. She sent back a polite letter, accompanied by a copy of the Thornes' marriage certificate, and a statement affirming that her client, Mrs. Catherine Thorne, was merely exercising her right to manage a marital asset. Sotheby's own legal department, smelling the PR opportunity of a lifetime, and protected by Catherine's clear legal standing as his wife, stood firm. They announced the auction. Lot 137 in their upcoming Magnificent Jewels auction in New York. Le Coeur de la Nuit, now publicly and deliciously nicknamed the Thorne Necklace. The pre-auction estimate was set at $3 million to $5 million, the high end, reflecting its newfound notoriety. The story erupted just as Amelia had predicted. Page 6 ran the headline, "Thorne on the Rocks. Billionaire's wife to auction mystery diamond." The article was filled with speculation, quoting anonymous friends who suggested a major marital rift. The narrative was set. Catherine was the enigmatic, wronged woman, and Marcus was the powerful husband with a secret. He was used to controlling the news cycle about his business. This personal scandal, so public and humiliating, was a territory for which he was unprepared. He was being outplayed at his own game, and he was furious. For Catherine, living in her anonymous apartment, it was a surreal experience. She was at the center of a media storm, yet completely removed from it. She spent her days attending prenatal appointments, meeting with Amelia, and preparing for the fight of her life. The fear was still there, a constant low hum beneath the surface, but it was now overlaid with a powerful sense of agency. She hadn't just taken the necklace, she had taken back control. The auction wasn't just about money, it was about justice. It was a public reckoning, and the whole world was invited to watch. The main auction salon at Sotheby's New York headquarters was a theater of immense wealth and silent predatory tension. The air thick with the scent of expensive perfume and old money, crackled with an energy that had little to do with the art and antiques lining the walls. Tonight, the main event wasn't an impressionist painting or a royal antiquity. It was a public execution of a reputation, and the room was packed with spectators eager for the spectacle. They sat in rows of plush red velvet chairs, a congregation of the world's richest and most powerful oil scions from Texas, looking bored, fresh-faced tech billionaires in hoodies, trying to look unimpressed, and stone-faced representatives for anonymous international consortiums. Along the sides of the room, a veritable flock of journalists and society columnists stood with notebooks poised, their expressions a mixture of professional interest and undisguised glee. They were vultures circling a gilded carcass, and the carcass in question was the public image of Marcus Thorne. Catherine was not among them. She was miles away in the serene anonymity of the corporate apartment that had become her sanctuary and war room. The city lights of a different neighborhood twinkled outside her window, a view she found comforting in its unfamiliarity. She sat on a plush sofa, her bare feet tucked underneath her, a bowl of untouched strawberries on the table. Beside her, Chloe provided a steady, grounding presence, her hand resting on Catherine's arm. They watched the scene unfold on a large television screen, fed by a secure private live stream link provided by Amelia's firm. The feed was crystal clear, capturing every subtle nuance, every nervous twitch, and every predatory smile. "Look at them all," Chloe murmured, her voice laced with disdain. "They look like sharks that have smelled blood in the water." Catherine could only nod her throat tight. Every time the camera panned across the crowd, Her stomach twisted. These were people she knew. She had sat on charity boards with these women, hosted these men for dinner. Now they were here to watch her life get publicly dissected. She saw Blythe Carrington, the doyen of Upper East Side society, whispering behind her program to a friend, her eyes glinting. She saw a young rival of Marcus's from Silicon Valley, smirking openly. It was a painful, surreal tableau. And then the camera found him. Marcus. He sat in the third row, an island of furious stillness in a sea of murmurs. He was dressed in a dark, impeccably tailored Brioni suit, a walking monument to power and arrogance. Flanked by his lawyers, he stared straight ahead at the podium, his face a chiseled mask of control. But Catherine, who had studied that face for years, could see the truth. She saw the minute tightening of the muscles along his jaw, the almost imperceptible tremor in the hand that rested on his knee, the cold, dead fire in his eyes. He wasn't there to bid. He was there as a warning, a human shield for his own ego, trying to intimidate the room into devaluing the prize. His presence was meant to scream, "This is mine! You dare not touch it!" On the podium, the auctioneer Alistair Finch, a man born for this kind of high-stakes theatre, finally arrived at the main event. And now he announced his voice, a smooth, cultured baritone that carried to every corner of the room. "We come to lot 137. A jewel of truly exceptional character, and shall we say a rather compelling modern provenance." A wave of knowing, suppressed laughter rippled through the audience. Marcus's stony expression didn't change, but a faint flush of color crept up his neck. "Known as Le Coeur de la Nuit." Finch continued as a high-definition video of the necklace filled the large screen behind him, each diamond magnified to the size of a fist, or as the press has so memorably christened it, the Thorn Necklace. The baby inside Catherine gave a sudden powerful kick, as if reacting to the tension radiating from the screen. She gasped, placing both hands on her belly. "He's here," she whispered to Chloe, her eyes wide. It was a strange, grounding sensation, a reminder of the new life that was at the heart of this entire battle. "Of course he is," Chloe whispered back, squeezing her sister's hand. "He wants to see his mama win." The bidding began at a blistering pace. Finch, a master of his craft, orchestrated the proceedings like a symphony conductor. $2,500,000, thank you, sir. A swift start. Do I hear 2-7 a paddle, shot up from the phone bank, 2,700,000 from the telephone bidder, and 3 million from the gentleman in the fifth row. At 3 million do I hear 3.2. The bids flew, the numbers climbing so fast they became an abstraction. 3.2 million. 3.5. 3.8. It surpassed the original purchase price in less than 90 seconds. Each new bid was a nail in the coffin of Marcus's pride, a public refutation of his power. He sat immobile, a statue of rage, but the aura of menace he had tried to project was failing. The story behind the necklace had made it more desirable than he could have ever imagined. It was no longer just a piece of jewelry. It was a trophy of a financial and social war, and the men in this room were all warriors in their own right. At $4,500,000, the bidding finally began to slow. The initial frenzy subsided, leaving only 3 serious contenders. The gentleman in the fifth row, a determined phone bidder, and a man in the front row, who Catherine recognized as a proxy for a Middle Eastern royal family. The air grew thick with anticipation. $4,500,000 to the gentleman in the front row. Finch said, his voice dropping slightly to draw the room in. Are we all done at $4.5 million? And then a new player entered the game. From the back of the room, a place usually reserved for staff or minor attendees, a new paddle was raised. It was held by a woman Catherine hadn't noticed before. She was elegantly dressed in a cream-colored Chanel suit and a wide-brimmed hat that cast her face in shadow. Her posture was ramrod straight, and her movement was economical and decisive. There was no hesitation, no nervous glance around the room. Just the paddle raised with quiet, unshakable authority. Finch's professional gaze snapped to her. $4,700,000, a new bidder at the back of the room. Welcome, madam. The man in the fifth row immediately countered. 4.8. The woman in the hat raised her paddle again, without a moment's delay. 5 million? A collective gasp swept the room. It was a knockout number, a jump intended to signal immense buying power and an unwillingness to play games. Chloe grabbed Catherine's arm. Who is that? I have no idea. Catherine breathed, her eyes glued to the mysterious woman. On the screen, Marcus finally moved. He turned his head slowly, deliberately, his eyes narrowing as he tried to penetrate the shadow of the hat. His look was one of pure venom. But the woman, if she noticed, gave no indication. She remained perfectly still, her paddle now resting in her lap, having made her definitive statement. The room fell into a deep, expectant hush. The gentleman in the fifth row, looking rattled, quietly shook his head. The proxy in the front row conferred for a moment, before giving a slight negative gesture. The Sotheby's representative on the phone murmured into her receiver, listened, and then placed it back in its cradle. All other contenders had folded. It was all down to the woman in the hat. Alistair Finch let the silence hang for a moment longer, milking the drama. $5 million, then? To the lady in the back, he said, his gaze sweeping the room one last time. He turned his eyes almost cruelly toward Marcus Thorne. Fair warning, the hammer is up. Catherine leaned forward, her heart pounding a deafening rhythm in her ears. This was it. The culmination of all the pain, the fear, and the desperate, audacious planning. Going once. The camera zoomed in on Marcus's face. The mask was gone. In its place was the raw, naked disbelief of a king watching his castle being dismantled before his very eyes. He had built an empire on the principle of control, and in this public forum, he had lost it completely. Going twice. Crack. The sound of the gavel was sharp and absolute, a sound of finality that echoed through the silent room like a gunshot. Sold. Finch's voice boomed triumphant. For $5 million to paddle number 782. Congratulations, madam. The room exploded into a cacophony of applause and excited chatter. Chloe let out a whoop of pure joy, pulling a sobbing Catherine into her arms. They weren't tears of sorrow, but of a profound and overwhelming release. The weight she had been carrying for months had finally been lifted. She had won. The public humiliation was only the beginning of Marcus's downfall. With a war chest of $4 million after Sotheby's commission, Amelia Hayes unleashed her legal hounds. The divorce filing was a quiet, procedural affair, but the forensic accounting team she assembled was an act of war. They were sharks of a different breed, quiet, meticulous men and women who lived for finding the single misplaced comma in a complex ledger that could unravel an entire financial empire. They descended upon Marcus's Byzantine corporate structures and found exactly what Amelia had suspected. Marcus's arrogance extended to every facet of his life. He had a vast network of offshore shell corporations in the Cayman Islands and undeclared accounts in Switzerland, all designed to hide hundreds of millions of dollars from the IRS, and by extension from his wife, in any potential settlement. The confrontation took place not in a courtroom, but in the sterile, soundproofed conference room of Amelia's law firm. It was just Marcus, his lead attorney, Amelia, and Catherine. Amelia didn't make threats. She simply had one of her accountants project a flowchart onto a large screen, a dizzying web of transactions holding companies and numbered accounts that led directly from Marcus's primary corporation to his hidden treasure chests. The SEC and the IRS would find this terribly interesting. Marcus, Amelia, said, her voice calm and pleasant. I imagine a federal investigation would be quite disruptive to your business. The color drained from Marcus's face. He looked at the flowchart, then at Catherine, truly looked at her for the first time in months. He saw not the weeping, broken woman he had dismissed, but a formidable opponent who had used his own tactics against him. He had been beaten not by legal force, but by superior strategy and a will that was stronger than his own. The fight was over. He capitulated completely. The settlement was staggering. Catherine received a sum that was astronomical by any standard, securing her future and the future of her child in perpetuity. She was also granted the Fifth Avenue penthouse, a final ironic trophy. She put it on the market the next day, enlisting Sotheby's this time, their real estate division, to handle the sale. She wanted no part of that gilded cage. 2 months after the auction, Catherine gave birth to a healthy 7-pound baby girl. She held her in her arms, looking down at the small, perfect face, and felt a love so pure and powerful it eclipsed all the pain that had come before. She named her Hope. Months later, the final pieces of the story clicked into place. The identity of the woman in the hat was revealed in a small article in a philanthropy journal. She was the executive director of the Athena Foundation, a private fund established by a reclusive female tech billionaire dedicated to supporting women facing systemic injustice. The thorn necklace, a symbol of her victory, was loaned indefinitely to the Metropolitan Museum of Art. It was displayed in its own case, the small plaque beside it reading, Le Cœur de la Nuit, gift of the Athena Foundation, a testament to the price of betrayal and the enduring value of a woman's resolve. Catherine read the article in her new home, a beautiful light-filled house in Greenwich she had designed herself. It was a place of warm woods and soft linens, of sprawling gardens, and most importantly, the sound of a baby's happy gurgles. She looked out the window at her daughter sleeping peacefully in a bassinet in the sun-dappled yard. She was free. She was no longer a planet orbiting a volatile sun, no longer a North Star for a man lost in his own darkness. She had navigated her way out of the storm and had become her own damn constellation, vast, brilliant, and untouchable. Catherine Sterling's story is a powerful reminder that the greatest strength is often forged in the deepest betrayal. She transformed from a millionaire's wife into the architect of her own destiny, proving that justice isn't always found in a courtroom. Sometimes it's sold to the highest bidder. Her audacious plan wasn't just about revenge. It was a masterclass in reclaiming one's power when it seems all is lost. What do you think? Was Catherine's move a stroke of genius or a reckless gamble? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of resilience and brilliant payback captivated you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs a reminder of their own strength And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more incredible real-life dramas. Your support helps us continue to bring these powerful stories to light.